Welcome everyone to the first episode of Matt's Chats. Today we're going to talk about growing in the ground and growing in containers. Um, I am by no means the expert on this subject. However, I figured I would share my experiences with you to help make a better informed decision in your subsequent growing seasons. There are benefits and drawbacks to both of them, and I'm going to kind of hit the highlights and lowlights of both methods. I did not forget about you indoor gardeners. I just have never taken a plant from seed to fruit inside, so I really don't have enough information to share it. I don't feel comfortable until I am read up on the subject. What I would totally recommend is whichever method you prefer, pick someone. Find a grower who is really good at what they do. They're usually the more, how should I put it, seasoned growers out there. You could just stroll through the grow logs and you see the guys that in the 75, 50, or 75, 85 page counts, and their gardens are just right out of a magazine. Guys like Greg and Silver Surfer and AJ, those guys have been doing it for years and years and years, and they've honed their skills and crafts, and they've got a ton of information and knowledge to pass on. And that's where I spent a lot of time before I started growing successfully. Stumbled upon them, and I just kept on asking questions. Now find one that suits what you want to use. If you're not going to be an in-ground grower, I would focus more on the container guys and make sure you kind of read up on the in-ground stuff just for the future. You never know where you're going to be in 5 years, and it's always good to have a good baseline knowledge on both methods so you can kind of adapt. And a lot of stuff transfers over, but mainly the prep and the kind of maintenance is the big, where the two kind of take sharp turns the other ways. I prefer, personally, in-ground growing just because I feel it is easier for me to do without much micromanagement. With container plants, I feel like I have to do a lot of micromanaging, making sure they're watered, making sure that they're not waterlogged, making sure that they're not in a place where they're going to get way too much sun to where they wilt over and die in the afternoon. With my in-ground stuff, I could go on a 7-day vacation and not even ask anybody to come over and watch my plants. I couldn't say the same for the containers. I'm going to try my best to kind of follow a loose template schedule, if you will. I have quite a notorious history of going off on rants. I have my trusty notes here to kind of keep me on track. And we're going to start off today with growing in the ground. Now, growing in the ground, I look at it as an investment. Think about it like this: you're buying into it. Your first season, you may have great results. If you prep your soil properly, it will pay you back dividends in the future season. Think about it like this: you could have great results your first season, but every subsequent season, you're building on that ecosystem within the soil. Now, the same can't be said for the synthetic growers out there. I'm not like, oh no, but oh no. Organic growing in the long run will pay you back so much better than if you are using synthetic nutrition on your plants. Over time, the ground will start to break down. It's going to hold on to all those synthetic nutrients in your soil, and it's just going to be one big mess in the future seasons. With organic growing, every year you're just building on top of that micro ecosystem within your soil, and it's just going to be, you're just going to have a healthier, happier plants in the long run. Another huge benefits of going into the ground is the fact that, put it this way, when you start your seeds in those small 1x1 cell seed trays, it's not very long after they pop that you need to put them in something larger. The roots need to spread out. The bigger the roots, the bigger the plant, the happier the plant. With growing in the ground, you don't have that problem. You pretty much have as far as the roots can spread, which is going to give you a great root ball, a great canopy, better yields, better nutrient uptake, better water retention. Now you can get some of the good or some of the same results using a large enough container, which I'll mention a little bit later. But this is the way nature intended it. You put the plant in the ground, the plant grows. But one of the big drawbacks of it in the ground is the fact that it is in the ground. If you have terrible soil, you're kind of screwed from the bat, or right off the bat. So there's a couple ways you can combat that. One of them would be excavating everything, pulling it all out, and replacing it with good stuff. That can be way more work. Another way to do it would be to use raised beds. Raised beds is it straddles that in-ground to container growing. There are similar aspects to both of it. You need to prep the ground soil, the soil below the raised bed, prior to putting your raised bed on there, or else you're just going to trap all that water below your awesome draining soil. You would fill it, you can fill it similar to where you would fill soilless containers, or you could fill it to something mimic the ground. You can also use raised rows, which I've seen a couple really successful growers with anywhere between 8-inch and 20-inch rows. They just kind of built up. Notorious Georgia clay will do that to you. There ain't no way you're going to get down in there to break up that soil. So what a lot of growers are doing is you're just mounding it up with making kind of like a loose raised bed on top of your soil. Another drawback, and I'd say it's a pretty big one, is weeding. I don't think anybody in this world likes to weed, and container growers, most of the time they don't have to weed. Depending on your soil mix, you could completely avoid an entire season of weeding. But for me, weeding is a constant. We just got 3 weeks straight of torrential downpour. Now, not like, oh, it thunderstormed for a little bit and it was really wet. I'm talking about biblical. Like, there are rodents floating down rivers in my front yard to newer pastures. My plants, for some crazy reason, there was really no effect on them. One of the benefits of growing in the ground, the water, as quickly as it would accumulate, that's as fast as it would just get pushed out, dissipate, go down in the ground, and kind of drain. I could not do the same with the container. They would get waterlogged and die. I've had it happen in previous seasons. But after all these rains, what does it bring? Tons of freaking weeds. Also, it could be a lot of work. Not necessarily more work than container growing, just a little bit different type of work. You need to get your soil inspected or soil tested, send it into your local ag department, and they'll tell you your pH. You may need to do some soil amending. You should definitely double dig or prep the plot. And then you should put some stuff in like Myco and Soil Blast, some other stuff that's going to really build up that ecosystem within there. A lot of organic material that'll break down over time and just give you a happier, healthier soil, happier, healthier plants in the future. On the other side of the fence, we have container growers. Container growing is wildly popular. It is awesome for people who have limited space. They're only growing a few plants. Well, I've seen some ridiculously large container grows out there. Or just because they want to micromanage each plant and make sure that they get a specific amount of soil mixture, a specific amount of nutrients, a specific amount of water, etc., etc. For container growers, you can run into the drawbacks would typically be plant size, space, and cost. Those are three. I'd say one of them is significant, or two of them are significant. One of them is maybe a benefit, maybe a drawback, depending on what side of the spectrum you're on. Space. You need to have plants or room for your plants. You can grow a pepper plant should be in a 5-gallon container or larger. In order to get a decent plant with good yields, something comparable to in-ground, you need to be at about 5 gallons. Now I've seen them all the way up to 50 gallons, and I've seen 6-foot plants or 4-foot wide plants in a 5-gallon container. It happens. Not every time, but it happens. The larger the room, or the more room that the soil or that the roots can spread out, the larger the plant you're going to end up with. So for container growers, that may be a benefit for them if they're not just choosing to use containers because they cannot go in the ground. Rent, space, soil issues, whatnot. The space, the compactness of the plants may be a really good benefit for them. You can top the plants, you can get them more bushier and more compact. You're going to still get great yields, but they would typically, on the whole, they're going to end up kind of smaller. Another benefit for growing, or another drawback would be price, money. It can be extremely expensive. Now you can do this completely on the cheap, and there's some great soil mixes out there that you can do very inexpensive. However, there are a lot of in-ground or a lot of container growers who like to use the top-of-line stuff. ProMix is awesome. I love it, and I use it for my containers until I get them up out into the ground. And for the ones that are going to just stay in the containers, I'm going to go with a ProMix type mixture. It's expensive, like at anywhere between $36 and $42 a bale, 3.8 cubic feet. It makes a ton of soil. However, it's super expensive, and you can't find it everywhere. So sometimes you may pay 100% or more of the product cost just for shipping. So container growers may run into a cost issue. You can do it on the cheap. but you can also do it really, really good for a lot of money. Um, Another thing you want to be cognizant about is space. 5-gallon buckets, which are pretty much the norm, are about 12-inch diameter or something like that. And if you're going to go with larger grow bags, it can be much larger. So when you're planning out your container garden, if you have a 10 by 5 balcony, you're not going to be able to stick, 15 plants on that balcony and walk out there to get any watering done. Now you can probably fit stuff, but at the end of the day, you are going to have to plan the same way you would plan on growing in the ground with your space requirements for your containers. They do take up space, and in a lot of cases, whereas the plant would be much smaller at the beginning and you're in a 5-gallon bucket or a 64 or a 50 gallon grow bag, the plant might be really small, and you're going to have a whole lot of soil and a large open space. But as the plant starts growing and branching out, then you may have to readjust your space requirements. You may be able to put 5-gallon buckets right next to each other right now when your plants are still in the grow phase, but once they start branching out and your canopies start getting large, like I said, up to 3-4 feet I've seen, you're going to definitely need to reevaluate your space requirements, even if you're using the containers. So containers are great for people who cannot go in the ground and who want to micromanage their grow. I think that everyone should know how to grow in containers, because that is the most, I would say, versatile way of growing. You can start them in one place, you can pick them up and move them somewhere else. At the end of the season, you don't have to worry about digging your plant up and throw them, and if you want to overwinter it, you can just put it right into your grow tent or put it into a good sunny window over the off season. Also, when you get terrible weather, you can bring them inside, bring them under cover. It's a great thing. I mean, it's a pain in the tail to pick them all up. If you got 30 containers, they get pretty heavy after the first 5 or 6. Drag them underneath an awning and then drag them back out. But also, in some cases, you're going to need to do that so your soil doesn't get destroyed, your plants don't get compacted and super waterlogged. So at the end of the day, if you have limited space requirement, or you just simply can't go on the ground, totally recommend going in containers. Also, I would even put out there that every pepper gardener is a container gardener, no matter if they go on the ground at the end or not, because we start our seeds in containers. We start potting up in containers. We grow them, harden them before they go into the ground. They're in containers. So I would definitely recommend honing that skill. It is a great baseline to have, and it's, hey, if something happens and you need to travel to a place for 6, 8 months, 10 months, and you want to grow a plant, you can throw it in a container and you can grow a plant on your porch. At the end of the day, it doesn't even matter which method you choose, as long as you're growing something. I appreciate you guys taking the time out to watch. Leave me questions or comments. Let me know if it's something you like and you want to see more of, if you have any recommendations for future videos. Thanks.